Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 5, Episode number 9. Today is Tuesday, February the 13th, 2018. My name is Graham Perro. With me tonight is Tyler Fitch. Melissa is hopefully going to join us later, but we weren't sure when she was going to be available, so hopefully she'll join us in progress. A bunch of news to talk about this week, as well as a whole bunch of games this past weekend. So let's get right into the news. And I guess, Tyler, you can give us your thoughts on the big trade of the week. It wasn't especially a big trade, but Buffalo sends lefty forward Pat Saunders, who had been kind of riding the bench for half the season, to the Stealth for Thomas Hogarth. And each of them played in their for their new teams this past weekend. So what did you think of this deal?
I think it helps the Stealth address a concern I had where the third lefty for the Stealth have not been producing. They had Evan Messenger playing for a little bit of you have a kid in Casey Jackson who was a little bit hurt, so he wasn't able to play. And so Pat Saunders has good NL experience. Just a couple weeks ago in Edmonton, he got the overtime winner and in Saskatchewan, and had the overtime winner and helped the Bandits win that game. I also realized he looks a lot like Roy Smith. I was like, that guy looks like him. That's the new guy. That's Pat. He's played a couple summers in Langley, specifically for the Thunder, so he knows the arena. Somehow I think that matters. I don't know if it does or not, but he had been around there a bit, even though he's an Eastern person. And the very first possession of the game, they threw the ball off on the right side, and he just cut down the middle, and they tried to feed him and give him a little dunk. It didn't go quite right, and I asked him about it. He said it wasn't a set play, like, hey, welcome to the team, you get the first shot. He said he's going to go to the middle and do what was necessary. But I'm happy to have him. He's can be a sneaky scorer, and we had discussed a couple weeks ago about underrated players, and he can put up numbers. When he was with New England, he had a lot of goals, and should help keep the opponent's defenders from just jumping all over Logan Schuss and Corey Small, and they got to respect him, and it'll make a big difference. So I'm excited to see how things work as they get more chemistry and time together besides one practice and one game.
He is a former 40-goal scorer. He actually scored 38 in 2015 and 44 in 2016, down to only 27 last year, but that was split time between New England and Buffalo. I'm probably the one of the primary goal scorers on those two teams, which I'm sure is not going to be his role in Vancouver, but he does seem like a versatile kind of guy who can fill in wherever he's needed. So that might be a good move for the Stealth. And yeah. Buffalo seems to love their transition players, so anytime they can stockpile more transition players, they deal with transition players the way the Swarm deal with draft picks, I think.
That's true.
All right. There was another change actually relating to the New England Black Wolves, which is a little weird. Nobody seemed to notice this until the team took the floor and realized that Sean Evans did not have the C on his jersey anymore. Kyle Buchanan did. And this was not announced or anything. So I guess somebody went to Rich Lisk and sort of said, hey, what's going on? And I'm not entirely sure if Evans was told he wasn't the captain anymore, or if he was involved in the discussion and it was decided that he shouldn't be the captain anymore. But it kind of sounded like they wanted to let him focus more on just being Sean Evans on the floor and doing what he does and not worrying about the captain-related things that he had to do. So they moved that over to Kyle Buchanan. And so, like I said, I don't know if he was like one of the headlines or tweets or something that I saw said that Evans was stripped of the captaincy, which sounds like it was torn away from him without him knowing or while he was objecting to it. I don't know if that's the case or not, but interesting that they just kind of did that under the radar and didn't say anything about it. But I guess changing the captain away from somebody who's still on the team is kind of an odd thing to do, though I guess Calgary basically did the same thing this year as well.
And I feel like it happened at some point in the last 5 years, or somebody else who they was maybe a forward and was getting distracted and having to change the captaincy mid-season, but I can't remember who it was, so I can't prove it. But yeah, no thoughts here, except for the poor choice of wording to say stripped if it was like a mutual decision around his performance or something.
Another bit of news that just came out today, and that is that Tom Schreiber is injured and will miss 6 to 8 weeks. He has a partially torn PCL, which is the posterior cruciate ligament, which is basically the back side of the knee, whereas the anterior cruciate ligament, the ACL, which you hear a lot more of, is the front part of the knee. I believe that's the case anyway. So people seem to tear their ACLs all the time. So this is the PCL. Apparently he will not need surgery, and he will be back in plenty of time for the playoffs. So that part of it is good news. Obviously, the fact that he'll miss 6 to 8 weeks is not good news for the Rock. But it doesn't sound like it's a super major injury, but he'll just need some time to rest up. It looked like I guess he kind of got squashed in between two Nighthawk defenders, and he said he felt something tear in his knee and kind of hobbled off the floor. Decided to get out there for one more shift, see how it was. Quickly decided that was a bad idea, got off the floor again, and that was the end of it. So I've mentioned in my blog a few times that Dan Lintner has been the healthy scratch for at least the past 5 games, I believe. So it looks like he will be back in the lineup, and we'll see how that goes. Any thoughts on that one, Tyler?
I'm glad he has a timeline to come back. I hope he comes back at 100%. And if not, it's the kind of thing that makes the MLL get mad when their reigning MVP gets hurt playing in a different league. But he wants to play, and it's the game. It could happen in either league, and you just can't have those. You really can't have those kind of thoughts, but sometimes it comes up. People get like, oh, he played in the summer and he got hurt, and now the NLL's mad. You don't pay him enough to make him want to play exclusively for you, so deal with it.
Yeah, that's just the way lacrosse is and has been for a long time, and likely will be for the foreseeable future.
Yep.
All right, and the last bit of news might be the huge bit of lacrosse news of the year. If you were following Twitter a few days ago, it seemed to be anyway. Everybody was talking about it, and that's the fact that we have an emoji coming out either in March or October. The reports seem to vary, which is a lacrosse stick. So thank goodness for that. And of course, I'm being quite facetious here because I really don't see what the big deal is. If you look at all the different emojis that the Unicode Consortium has created, there's vegetables, and there's a cheese wedge is one of them. Every sign of the zodiac has one. There's balls and equipment from just about every other sport there is. There's hundreds of these things. So the fact that we have a lacrosse one now does not mean that okay, now we're a mainstream sport. Now we're being recognized. Now, like it really doesn't mean much of anything, in my opinion. Any thoughts on that, Tyler?
Before Twitter expanded to 280 characters, this would have been just the most marvelous thing, but it doesn't matter anymore. That's not true at all. It's pretty exciting. It shows better recognition, and I'm kind of happy for it, but I'm also quite indifferent to it.
Yep. Okay. Let's get going on the games. Looks like Melissa might be able to join us soon. I'll have to send out an invitation to her in a minute and see if she's available. Okay, we got 6 games to talk about as well. So we had a couple of wins by Buffalo. They won. They beat New England and they beat Georgia. They scored 18 in both games, which is interesting. Toronto beat Rochester. Calgary beat Colorado. Saskatchewan beat Stealth, and Rochester rebounded from their 5-game losing streak to beat the Swarm, who are now on a 2-game losing streak. So we'll get into what was awesome and what was not awesome this week. I guess I'll start just for fun. And I'm going to start with awesome being Josh Byrne. There's been a lot of sort of talk going back and forth on who the rookie of the year, the top rookie of the year candidate is so far. And I mean, we're barely at the halfway point, so we've got lots of time to go. But it's kind of been going back and forth between Josh Byrne and Zach Currier. And I'm going to say my vote goes to Josh Byrne right now. He's getting it. He seems like, and I thought this a couple of weeks ago. He looks kind of like a lefty Callum Crawford. And then Teddy Jenner said the same thing recently. So clearly I was right. Just because he's really tall, I think he's 6'4", 6'3", something like that, as is Crawford. And one of the things that I noticed Crawford likes to do is rather than diving across the net, he seems to like to jump straight up and shoot down. And when you're already 6'3" and you've got your stick way up in the air, and then you're shooting down from there, the ball's coming down from about 12 feet up, and the goalie, I mean, I don't know how the goalie stops that. So it looks like Josh Byrne likes to do the same thing, and that's kind of neat. So the fact that they've got Crawford doing that from one side and then Byrne doing that from the other, they're both very dynamic, and they do a lot of things, and they're both really exciting to watch. So just watching Byrne get more and more comfortable on the Bandits offense, he's looking really good. And I think Evan Schemenauer said it the other week that he can see Byrne being an MVP candidate within the next couple of years. And that may not be far off at all. Tyler, you have one?
Yeah, I'm going to be kind of a one-trick pony because I went up to, wow, I was really close to saying went up to San Jose, but I went up to Langley and watched Stealth play. And so we'll start things off there with the Curtis Hodgson experience, or his raising his number into the rafters. It was a great event. They had brought out all the Stealth players and their families because it was also family weekend. I don't know if that's a Canadian thing or British Columbia thing.
BC thing last weekend. It's Ontario and a few other places next weekend.
You guys get your act together. So the players with their parents, their kids, their significant others, they're all out there, and so there was a good 60 people out on the turf during the ceremony. The former players who showed up, lots of favorites, lots of people I hadn't seen in years, and it was a great experience. Dean Hill flew out from Ontario, and that was most unexpected because, I mean, they played together for a couple of years, but you don't know who's going to be there. But there he was. And Denise Watkins, the owner of the Stealth, gave Curtis and his wife a trip to anywhere in the world. It was like totally unexpected. You could tell it caught him off guard. And I talked to Curtis after the game. I was like, "Where are you going to go?" He's like, "We don't know. Like, we had no idea this was coming. We couldn't even prepared for such a thing." So it was a great night, great experience. And I had a great opening ceremony, and Curtis made my wife cry when he started talking about Chris Hall. So I don't know if she's weak or if he's a jerk, but he hit a lot of people when he started touching on some of those topics. But it was a good experience, and that was my first awesome. What do you got?
All right, that definitely does sound awesome. My next one is going to be a repeat of last week, actually. Christian Del Bianco again had a great game. Last week it was beating the Rock. This week it was beating the Mammoth. Now, Colorado was missing Zach Greer and Chris Wardle, so they were a little bit light on their offense. But Del Bianco and the Roughnecks defense, for that matter, all did a great job of keeping the Mammoth offense sort of off balance. They just couldn't get anything going, couldn't get into a groove. And I mean, everybody always talks about lacrosse being a game of runs, and if you can't get one of those runs, and you spend the whole night either trying to get one or trying to prevent the other team, that's not a great recipe for success. So Del Bianco had a save percentage up around 85%, which is outstanding. And just looked great, and I think he's making the which goalie do we protect in the summer's draft decision a little easier for the Roughnecks. And
making it harder. Like they have two that they really want to keep. They're not like, yeah, we haven't seen anything from CDB. We'll let them go. Like, no, they know that they know what they got, and the other kid's still young. That's harder for them.
It's not like they're giving up Frank Giuliano because he's no good. And it looks like it was going to be a tough decision, but the way Del Bianco's playing, they may not see much of Frankie in the next little while. So I guess from that point of view, it makes the decision easier. But I guess either way, San Jose, who is it? San Diego, or Philadelphia is going to get a pretty darn good goaltender on the assumption that whoever the Roughnecks don't protect is going to get chosen, and that seems to be a pretty good bet.
Yep.
So Christian Del Bianco was awesome this weekend again, and we have Melissa. Hello, Melissa. Oh, we can see Melissa. We can't hear her.
Yep, got to get those settings just right.
Okay, can you hear me
technical
now?
difficulty. There we go.
I don't know why it resets those.
Just wants to keep you on your toes.
Apparently.
All right.
All right. We're in the middle of our awesomes now, Melissa, but I'll get Tyler to do one so that you can get your stuff ready.
Sure. My next awesome is related to the last one in the sense that I went up to watch a live game in Langley for the Vancouver Stealth, and it was great to see what the camera doesn't show. There's been many times where I've said, this season where I've said, I don't know what Joel McCready clearly does to help the team as a whole, because kind of the ball goes to him and he takes a bunch of shots and the offense stops flowing. But before the game, during the warm-ups, you see McCready and Dutch. They have a good chemistry. Like they're talking to each other, saying, all right, this is what I'm going to do. We're going to go do our man-up drills and our extra man, as they call it. And like, all right, they're just in each other's ear, like making plans and trying to execute and trying to get better. So there is some good synergy there. And as much as the product on the floor is failing when they are facing the opponents, it's not like nobody's like shunning each other. There's no cold shoulders. There's no chemistry problem that was visible. Like everybody's trying to win. They hate that they're losing, but they're all on the same page. So seeing that stuff that you can't see just on the broadcast was a great experience. Later on, I saw like Andrew Suter. He's new to the team, but they love him. He's a funny man, like really, really funny. And hearing him talk, like this summer, he's the junior A coach in Mimico, and Dean Hill is there, and he's the junior A coach for the Six Nations Arrows, and they're scheming to battle each other because they're not like looking past the season because Dean doesn't have a season; he's already done playing. But like, they're just having fun. It's like, all right, I'm going to beat you this summer, and Dean's like, no, you're not. There's no chance of that. Like, don't even kid yourself. I said, Dean, who's your goalie? That's pretty important. He goes, it doesn't matter. I've got Austin Stotts, the young kid, Randy Stotts' younger brother. It's like, we're fine. Like Dean, I think, thinks that he's going to be better than Cody Jamieson, or he plays at that level better than Cody Jamieson did at the same age, which is just incredible. So he's like, so I don't care. I'm not even sure who my goalie is, but I'll be at Andrew and Mimico. Like I got that part figured out.
We might win every game 19-18, but
yes,
that's still a win.
It still counts. So yeah, it was just a fun night seeing live lacrosse, seeing how the players interact with each other, and just overall a great experience. So that was my next awesome. Melissa, are you ready with an awesome, or should we go to Graham?
I only have a couple, so it's going to be pretty easy to squeeze my few in. My big awesome is, and my brain is fried today, so I'm drawing a blank on his name, but Calgary's goalie.
Christian Del Bianco.
Del Bianco. I knew it was Del something. I kept thinking all these names. I'm like, nope. I know it's not it. Del Bianco looked awesome in net. In fact, the whole Calgary team looked awesome. it was hard to believe that this is the team that we saw just a few weeks ago. They looked really solid. And the Mammoth looked really bad, but that's a whole other side of that. So we're just gonna stick with Del Bianco, looking awesome. So props to them and really just the whole Calgary team. So that's my awesome. May have been against my team, but I was really happy to see that they finally came together. They found the team that we've been waiting for.
Yeah, we kind of all knew that team was in there someplace, and they kind of had to dig and find it. And yeah, it was, yeah, they certainly looked good this weekend, and Del Bianco was one of my awesomes as well. My next one is the hidden ball trick, which I think is cool. And this one was a little weird. Maybe it was weird because of the camera angle, but from the camera angle, it was obvious what was going on. And it was almost like, let's give this a try and it probably won't work, which I think happens most of the time when you see that. Somebody will sort of turn around, flip the ball up, and either catch it himself or the other guy will catch it, and then they'll turn around and both cradle. And just about every time you see that, every defender on the floor points to the guy with the ball. And it's like, okay, well, that didn't work anyway. It didn't matter. This time, nobody pointed. It looked like they didn't even know that this was happening, except for Jason Noble. And so Austin Shanks comes up, tosses the ball over to, who was it? Kyle Jackson. And Shanks went up one side and Jackson looped around the other side. And Jason Noble seemed to have seen what was going on. So he chased Jackson, but either he didn't say anything or nobody listened to him, because every other defender and the goalie was looking directly at Shanks. And so Jackson just kind of looped around, tossed it in the net, and that was an easy goal. And the ball was in the net for a good couple of seconds before the goalie even turned to look. He was just staring directly the other way. So that was kind of cool. You don't see that often. Like I said, it seems like they try it all the time and it almost never works. But when it does work, it was pretty cool. So I thought that was neat.
And I'm sorry, Graham, which game was that in?
That was Rochester, Georgia.
Okay, yeah, I didn't get to see that one.
The Georgia announcers didn't seem to see it either. They were watching Shanks and they're like, the ball's in the net. What the heck happened? And I believe it was Mitch Belisle said, I think that might have been a hidden ball trick. And they kind of had to go back and look. So if you can fool everybody, including the announcers, then you've done it right. So anyway, that was entertaining. So I like that. So I'll call that an awesome. Tyler.
Sure. My next one is watching Ben McIntosh play in person. He's either built like he's huge. He's like a tree trunk and like super thick from like the chest down. And I can see how he's leading the league in goals when he can go where he wants, hold his spot, and then take shots. You still got to be a great shot, but he has the advantage of no defender, except maybe some of his teammates like Rubish, are going to push him out of his spot. The NL fact of the day, just yesterday, was the size of the players, Graham?
It was yesterday, yeah.
Yeah. He's, I don't know, I think he's 5'11", 205 or something. And the average defender is 6'1", 199. Anyways, but so like there's the average defender has less weight and less muscle apparently than Ben McIntosh. So to watch him in person and you realize, boy, nobody's moving him around. Like he goes where he wants, sets up where he wants. That's a pretty lethal player. And I hadn't fully appreciated it. I usually like watching Robert Church and boy, now I'm blanking, but I like watching them a little bit more and how they'll dodge and kind of get shots off. But you realize McIntosh this year, he's at another level where he's just a dominant force, and maybe not dodging like Curtis Dixon or some other people, but just sets up, owns his spot, and beats you. So good on Ben McIntosh, even though you're on the wrong team. I was impressed by what you do there. What do you have, Melissa?
My fried brain is not cooperating. Actually, I want to say awesome to the stealth announcers. Jake Elliott, and I forget who his cohort is.
Challoner.
I Didn't get to finish watching the game, unfortunately, but I know at least the first half, well, in the first 3/4. No, I watched most of it. Sorry. Like I said, fried brain. Just, it's hard when you're watching a team, as we've all discussed, get continuously beat. And the way they handle it, you could definitely hear the frustration in their voice because, like us, yeah, this is their job, but they're kind of fans too. So, of course, they have that same frustration many of the fans are feeling. And so, hearing how they were professionally airing that, I thought was actually really good. And it's kind of nice to hear because we've definitely heard some announcers that are definitely to homers. You can't deny it. And they make sure you know it. Whereas with both of them, it was very professional and they still cheered for the other team as well. And it was good. So we'll go with that as my next awesome.
I have to agree. Jake and Brad are two of the best for sure. And they rank right up there with the Mammoth guys, I think, in that you can tell what team they root for. Mainly, I mean, it's the one that they're employed by, and they do get a little more excited for their team's goals than for the other team's goals. But they're impartial isn't quite the right word, but they're not overly biased and overly homer. In that, a play on a great play by the other team, and they'll talk about how great a play it was. If somebody scores a beautiful goal, they'll say, "Oh, that was a beautiful goal." I've seen games, and I won't mention any announcers' names, but I have seen them where somebody from the other team will score a beautiful goal, and they'll just say, "Well, there's a goal from whoever," or they'll kind of downplay what the other team does and try and upsell what their own team does, and it gets frustrating when you're watching when a player from the other team scores a beautiful goal and they say, "Oh, well, that's kind of unfortunate." No, it's not. Why would that be? I mean, I guess it's unfortunate for your team, but don't talk about it as if it's just a generally unfortunate occurrence. It's not. I mean, it was a great goal, and they really should give credit to the players when they do something like that. And it frustrates
Well, and
me
they're
when
not
they
afraid
don't.
to say when the stealth players, oh, they got away with that, or okay, that was a bad call, but that one should have been called. And so it's nice because, as you said, so many announcers are like, oh no, our guys would never do something. Well, yeah,
Or if their
they're not
players
afraid to say, yeah, that was the right call.
or if their players just do something dumb and they'll say, "Well, that was a bad pass," or he shouldn't have shot at that point. He should have tried to do something else, or whatever it was. But when you're pointing out the flaws in your own team just as much as the flaws in the other team, that's as close as you can expect to a completely unbiased announcing crew, and that's kind of what we'd like to see, and what I'd like to see. I am out of awesomes, so Tyler, do you have any more?
I'm also out of awesomes. And Melissa?
Yeah,
Right.
my fried brain doesn't really have any more, so I think you can kick us off with the not awesomes.
Okay, not awesome. And I imagine Tyler will expand on this, so I'll just make it quick, and that's just Reese Dutch and Corey Small with 0 goals this week. Reese Dutch and Corey Small with 1 goal last week. It's good to see Logan Schuss taking over, but he can only do so much by himself. And as they say, your best players really need to be your best players, and that doesn't seem to be the case for the Stealth this year. And it's one thing to start the season slow, but we're basically at the midpoint of the season, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better. So I'll stop it there and let Tyler continue on the assumption that he has comments on that.
Yeah, I do. It's a bummer seeing the Stealth play. They're struggling on offense from their top 2 players, like you said, with Reese Dutch and Corey Small. And they did get some good secondary scoring, a little closer to what we saw with the Colorado game a couple weeks ago. Tony Malcolm, James Ray, they all got a goal. And so that kind of spread it out, but no transition effort at all from the Stealth. Suter got 1 goal, and Brandon Cleland got 1. So I can't say no transition. Oh, Tyson Rowe got his first goal ever. So congratulations, Tyson, on getting that first NLL goal ever. But it didn't. It wasn't like there was constant pressure. It was more like, oh, hey, they actually got a fast break, and it was kind of a fluke. It wasn't something they could consistently do. They were happenstance, and so that's the offense and defense transition struggling. The defense, I mean, they're down at least 6-0 after the first quarter. 6-0 before the Stealth got their first goal in the second. It was sorry. Look at my timesheet just right. Yeah. It was bad. I mean, again, I've broken record. First quarters for the Stealth, like they're down 8-0, down 6-0, down 5-0. It's just awful, and I don't know how to get them to start faster. They're all out there. They should be ready to go, same as their opponent, but they don't. That's unfortunate. I don't know. I'm not going to keep rambling about this. I need better offense, better defense, and better transition out of my favorite team. Melissa, what do you have?
Yeah, I was kind of feeling that way about my team this weekend. It's like, where are you? I mean, I don't want to take anything away from the way Calgary played because they played really well, but part of that was they looked even better because my team was just not showing up. They were looking really flat. So my not awesome is the Colorado Mammoth this weekend. So what about you, Graham?
Next one, I guess we'll just continue on the team theme, and that is the Georgia Swarm. Like I said, about the Stealth scoring, we're basically halfway through the season now. So any championship hangover or that kind of thing that might happen at the beginning of the season until they kind of get all their ducks in a row and figure out who's new on the team and who's not and that sort of thing should have been long over by now. And the team had an outstanding offense. It was like literally the highest scoring team in NLL history last year, and they can't score. I looked up the numbers after the game, and one of the things that they led the league in last year, in addition to just regular scoring, was power play scoring. They had 55 power play goals in 18 games. This year they have 8 in 8 games. So I mean, that's obviously way off. Clearly they're missing Jordan Hall, but I can't imagine it's just one player that has having that big of an impact, particularly when the reigning MVP is still there. So I don't know what the deal is there. They can't seem to score as well, nearly as well as they did last year. Their defense isn't as strong. Now they've had a lot of turnover on the defense as well. But Mike Poulin is playing okay, but not as well as last year either. So I don't know what the deal is in Georgia, but they certainly don't look like the defending champs at this point. So I've said all season long so far when making picks for games and such. The Swarm haven't played well, but at some point they'll break out and turn into the Swarm that we saw last year and that we're expecting. And now I'm starting to wonder if that's not going to be the case. Tyler, what's next?
Sure. I'm going to go, in a sense, I'm going to commend you, Graham, on watching games after you go to a game in Toronto and you come home and catch what's happening on the West Coast. Because for me, it was not awesome personally of trying to watch the other games this weekend while traveling. But you don't have a 6-hour drive to the games either. So, yeah, I spent all day Saturday getting up to the game, but I got to enjoy the game live. Go out afterwards and see a bunch of people I hadn't seen in a long time. But then driving home Sunday, like I missed the matinee game with Georgia and Rochester. So it made watching my games difficult. So that was a bummer. And I don't know. So if I was going to 9 games a year, even if it was just across town and I had to go up to Langley, I'd be commuting to the game during all those East Coast games. I want to get to watch nearly as many as easy as I do. So it's an interesting kind of trade-off I have where I live really far away, but I get to watch all the games. And if I lived close, I'd watch really good games live, but I wouldn't get to watch all the games. And I don't know which of those is better. I don't even have a guess right now. I just got to sit and ponder on that for a while.
It's
But,
different for me being on the East Coast in that I go to see a game at the ACC, and then usually traffic on the way home is nothing. So we leave the game, walk to the parking lot, drive home. I'm home in about 45 minutes. And if there's a game starting in Saskatchewan or Vancouver that night, I'm usually home in time to at least see most of it. Other games that are on at the same time, obviously, I'm going to miss, but that's true anywhere. So yeah, I can end up seeing a game live and then watch another game later on the broadcast, which yeah, you can do.
yeah,
And especially when you a 6-hour drive in between.
Yeah, I also take the different approach. When I go to the game, I usually get home at like 1 or 2. It's like after the game, you go up to the bar and you can actually see the people and talk to coaches. You can talk to players, and I do that. And that's part of the thing I enjoy about it. So I wouldn't be rushing off to watch. Well, I don't know. I would more actively be working on scheduling time to watch the replays, because I do love watching all the games. It's just, it wasn't easy this weekend, and that's all right because I had a great time. Melissa, do you have another not awesome?
I just am finding this very fascinating since I pretty much only watch the replays these days. But even when I was going to the Mammoth games all the time, I still always watch the replays. So I'm just fascinated by this. But I also only have a 20-minute drive to downtown. So it sounds like I have the easiest way to go see my team. But anyway, so my not awesome, I found out this today that apparently the new Firefox and NLL TV do not like to work together. I had all kinds of weird issues, including a really loud noise that kept chiming. Like, I don't know what it was, but it was this weird screechy noise. And so that's kind of my not awesome, is apparently, because I always use Google Chrome because we have a Chromecast, and so I send it up to our TV from my laptop, and it's awesome. So I never used Firefox for it, but because I already was doing other stuff with my browser and Firefox was open, I was like, oh yeah, we'll watch it through this, because I was actually watching on my laptop for a change. But the games were pixelated, like worse than when I sent them up to my TV, and this just weird periodic chime. And I know it was the game because it only did it on the Mammoth Calgary game. And so
I did hear that as well.
Obnoxious. Oh, I'm glad it wasn't just me, but it was the most obnoxious sound. So, and of course I had my laptop all loud, and so that's my not awesome, is don't use Firefox and whatever that weird sound was, because it was annoying as can be. So
Yeah,
what about you, Graham?
I heard that during the game as well, and I kept looking around, going, "Is my phone dinging or some other thing going on?" I couldn't figure out what it was, but I figured it had to be coming from the broadcast because that's all that was on. But yeah, that was kind of irritating. My last not awesome is again going back to Georgia Rochester, but the crowd in Georgia, and we've talked a number of times about the bad crowds that we've seen in Georgia. This one looked like the worst I've ever seen, and they had one a camera shot basically straight down the floor, and you can't see the crowd directly at the one end, but you can see the crowd at the other end and all the way along the side. And there looked to be a couple of hundred people there tops, and the crowd was listed as a little over 3,000, which I think is kind of on the small side for Georgia from what they list. But we've seen in the past that the number of people that are actually in the arena has to be way less than what they're reporting. And I tweeted that. I said, I really hope there's a lot of people in line for the concessions or something, because it doesn't look like there's anybody there. And I got a response from somebody saying, nope, I'm at the game, and what you see is what's here. And it's pretty scary. So yeah, if they're pulling in on the order of a few hundred people instead of a few thousand people, yeah, that does not bode well. Especially now, the team is struggling this year, but they are a championship team, so you would hope that would bring in a few more people. But unless they have some top name rap star there, it looks like they're just not getting the people out to the games in Georgia, and that doesn't bode well for the team's prolonged existence.
And they can't play on Sunday afternoons. I think they're only supposed to be like 1 or 2 Sunday games in the entire league this year, so they should have no more. But The Sunday games are awful.
I think
Yeah, they're
New
awful
England
for
has one
every
or two as
team.
well.
Yeah, they're awful for every team. So having a team that's struggling have them, that's just like the nail in the coffin. Not good.
Nope. Tyler, do you have another one?
Sorry, I just pulled up that game to look at the crowd. I'm willing to give them 1,200 people there, based on having gone through that same experience when I was down in San Jose. It's not that sparse. I've been in a game that literally had 175 people in the stands during a blizzard in New Jersey. I counted them. Like, that's all it was. It's like, all right. And they announced 2,000 or 3,000. It was total BS. But that crowd, from what I saw there, they can get 1,000 people based on there. But maybe. It takes a lot to do 1,000. Maybe go 600. But that's sad. No more Sunday games, please. No, I'm all out of not awesomes. I covered my 2 for the week.
Yeah, I really don't have a bunch either, so I think it's back to you, Graham.
All right. So more awesomes than not awesome. I guess that's kind of what we hope for. So we will get into our predictions from last week, and all 3 of us went 3-3. Tyler and I had the same picks, so we both got the Toronto, Colorado, and Saskatchewan games. Colorado being the losing team, so I'm not sure why I said it that way. But anyway, Toronto, Calgary, and Saskatchewan. Melissa got the Buffalo, Toronto, and Saskatchewan games correct. So, like I said, all 3 of us went 3-3. So Melissa is now at 23-14. I'm right behind her at 22-15, and Tyler is not that far back at 18-19, just under
even.
500.
Yeah.
All right. So why don't we shake things up this week and have Tyler go first?
Ooh, it's a nice little pity vote here. I appreciate this, everybody. The first game, Friday night, Vancouver at Calgary. They are being the Stealth. They're 1-9. They know it, and I think they've maybe already done the math. But I was talking to a player on Saturday night, and he says it's a playoff game. They know if they lose that game, they're 2 games behind Calgary specifically. Calgary will have 4 wins, and Stealth will only have 1. I don't think there's any situation where they recover from that, and that's awful. And so the Stealth know it's super important. They're going to come out ready to play, and I'm picking Calgary to win that game. Toronto going to Georgia. Georgia has 3 wins, but they haven't been spectacular. They haven't been hot anywhere, and Toronto has been a hot team. But maybe losing Tom Schreiber and knowing he's not playing for a week could get them mentally off their game. But I doubt it. They're a good team regardless. They've had lots of adversity of losing Hellier and Hickey at various times. So I'm not too worried about them. I can pick Toronto over Georgia. Saskatchewan or Saskatchewan, because they do that. Going to Rochester. So Rochester has some moments, but Saskatchewan is a great team. So I'm picking the Rush. I can't not pick the Rush. And finally, Colorado going to New England. A bit of a tough trip for Colorado. I think anybody going to New England who's not in the East, it's a tough trip. But Colorado's a good team. They have great moments. Zach Greer's coming back this week. I think I saw a tweet about that. So they're happy to have him back and some stability that he brings and experience. So I'm going to pick Colorado to go on the road to New England and beat them. And I'm going to go to Melissa because she has the best record.
And looking at our picks, it looks like we're not going to have a whole lot of change this week, win or lose. My picks are identical to Tyler's. With the way Vancouver's playing, I don't think you can pick them over anybody at this point. Same with Georgia. They're just not playing well. The Rush going to Rochester. The Rush, as Tyler said, they're just winning. You kind of can't pick against them. So it's just a no-brainer there. Colorado going to New England. New England just hasn't been playing the best. Colorado hasn't been playing the best the past couple games, but I'm going to pick them over New England. So what about you, Graham?
Same again. My picks are the same as yours. Vancouver, Calgary. Calgary played great last week. Vancouver did not. And so that seems like you guys said a no-brainer. Toronto, Georgia. Toronto has played really well most of the season. Well, they lost their first couple, and then they played great for a while. Lost to Calgary and came right back with a win against Rochester. So I'm going to go with them over the slumping Swarm. I started a bit of a controversy by asking people how to pronounce Saskatchewan. And so there was a lot of discussion this past week on Twitter about how to say it. And of course, it's hard to do that over a written medium. But I've been saying Saskatchewan all my life. And it sounds like the "wan" at the end. Many Saskatchewanians, Saskies, I think is what somebody said, is say that that's wrong. And it should be just Saskatchewan, not Saskatchewan. And then I heard from other people saying, well, some people say it that way and some people say it this way. Either one is fine. So I still don't really know the answer. So we'll just call them the Rush from now on. Or what we'll do is say Edmonton, and then that way everybody knows who we're talking about. And we can say that we're doing that consciously so that if we do it accidentally, then it'll seem like a conscious decision. So I'm going to go with Edmonton this week.
Melissa, it just happens naturally.
Well, Tyler made that same mistake earlier on, and I'm wearing my Edmonton shirt right now. So, yeah. So, okay, we'll go with the Rush over the Rochester Nighthawks. Rochester lost 5 in a row. They just managed to come back and not just managed to come back. I meant they managed to come back from their 5-game losing streak and play really well without Dan Dawson, honestly, or oddly is what I meant to say. They put up 17 goals without Dan Dawson against the Georgia Swarm. So I don't know if they'll be able to do that against the Rush. So I'm going to go with Saskatchewan there. And Colorado, New England. And yeah, I kind of waffled on this one as well, but settled on Colorado. They've still got one of the best goalies in the league. Aaron Bold looked like he sort of started out pretty strong in New England, but hasn't had the best. The last couple of weeks haven't been great for him. And if Colorado gets Chris Wardle and Zach Greer back, that will certainly help as well. So I'm going for the Mammoth there. And I guess that will do it for a kind of a late episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. Do you guys have anything more to mention?
Thanks for accommodating my schedule of being on the road Sunday.
Sorry, my brain was dead and I totally forgot.
All right, well, I guess that will do it. So this has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.